Alright, you may have noticed that during the last few months of 2023, I had spotlighted Barnaby Ghost-Owl. Yeah, that was a given. Anyway, I've given him a lot of spotlight recently. There's a reason. Don't worry, there's a method to my madness. In fact, I've had this theory video on the back burner because a lot has happened since I first had this idea to make this video. First, the fan-made video on Barnaby Ghost-Owl was great, even though that's GameToon's interpretation of what they think happened to Barnaby. That's the thing. I mean, no one knows what happened to Barnaby and why he became a ghost owl in the first place. And we most likely won't find that out until the Billie Bust Up game comes out. So we're left to speculate, to theorize, if you will. And that's why I'm making this video, because I want to tell you guys my theory. Another thing that has happened was that for a short while, the Billie Bust Up official Twitter account was privated so that only their followers could see their posts. They've since unprivated their account, just so you know, so don't worry. It's public, don't worry. So at that time, I couldn't put out this theory video, and that's another thing. As I delve into my Barnaby theory, I'm only going to show things that the Billie Bust Up game devs have shared publicly across their social media. For example, the cutscene that everyone knows and loves at this point. Yep, meeting Barnaby, that one. In other words, things from their Patreon is off limits. Yeah, they want things to be off limits when it comes to Patreon. So we're going to respect that boundary. We got to work with the tools that we've been given. So yes, I'm gonna reference the Barnaby cutscene heavily in this theory video, so I suggest you strap yourself down into whatever chair you're sitting in, because LBF is here to take you guys on a wild ride as we find out what happened to Barnaby. First, let's take a look at the cutscene. Okay, we'll fast forward to the actual chase sequence. As I was watching the chase sequence for the umpteenth time the other night, I couldn't help but take notes. And that's why you see these cards here. I made these with index cards and markers. Kind of artistic of me. Now, keep in mind, these cards are drawings of what I saw during the chase scene. The green acid, the clock, the bells. By the way, click the bell to get notifications on when my next video comes out and all that shebang-a-bang. Ha! We also have the knife, the camera turning different ways, ice, dynamite, cake, the lobster tank, spikes, bike, the grave and graveyard, cage, alligator, volcano, electricity, stew, cookbook, guillotine, kebab, pillow, and bread. Dang, that was a lot of observations. So you might be asking, why are these things important, LBF? Well, let me add to that. Based on my observations, the things I saw during the chase sequence, Barnaby mentions some of these in his song. The knife, acid, dynamite, cake, lobster tank, spikes, bike, cage, alligator, volcano, electricity, stew, guillotine, kebab, pillow, bread. Now, let's listen to how these words are used in the song.
Should we use this rusty knife or acid water gun? Dynamite is quick, but it makes a lot of mess. But baked into a yummy cake, though drowning in a lobster tank might hurt a little less. How about impaled upon a spike? Maybe something on a bike. We could put you in a cage with the hungry alligator. Drop you in a volcano with an active crater. What about 10,000 volts of electricity? Your turn to goat meat stew. I thought I'd try the guillotine. Cook you up like a kebab. Smothered by a pillow in your bed. A gluten overdose from too much bread.
With that said, you might still be asking, well, LBF, why do these things matter? Please tell us. Well, I think it's time we explore some concept art. As I've said earlier, I'm only going to share what the game devs have shared publicly across their social media. Having said that, when researching Billie Bust Up, I was sucked into their Twitter page. Funny, since I was debating on deleting my Twitter account last year at some point, but I was following Billie Bust Up on everything, including their Twitter, so Billie Bust Up was what got me to stay on Twitter. They convinced me to stay. Funny that. And boy, do I have a lot to show you guys. Billie Bust Up's Twitter is a treasure trove of interesting content. They also share great content on their YouTube, TikTok, the works. It's a win-win for everyone. Anyway, I've already started bookmarking some interesting posts from their Twitter because, like I said, it's a treasure trove of content. So here's what stood out the most. This concept art of Barnaby shadowing his supposed past self. Apparently, he was a mad scientist of some sort in his past life. Okay, not gonna argue with that. You might remember in his bio that he was quote-unquote killed by magical experiments in his lifetime. So that implies that there was a method to his madness, right? In other words, what possessed him to go down this road of insanity to where it literally cost him his life? Well, let's look at these next two pieces of concept art. This next one shows the living Barnaby looking at himself in the mirror, examining the bags around his eyes, suggesting that he might have pulled an all-nighter the night before. There's talk of a science speech of some sort that he has to prepare for, so automatically that confirms he's some kind of scientist, and probably well-respected. And you could sort of guess that since the chase sequence has things like acid, electricity, and a cookbook, it's kind of suggesting that he likes to experiment with stuff, especially cooking. That's why there's a lot of food imagery also. Speaking of food, the next one shows Barnaby offering a plate of different cheeses, as if he's serving them to his guests. Now, both the mirror observation and the cheese tray art were posted in the same post, mind you. So that's saying that Barnaby's past life was juggling work with play. He's taking pride in his career, but he also wants to have fun. So there's a sense of conflict between what he wants to do and what he has to do in life. And this leads to the next point. Some time ago, people were asking about the significance of the gems, because apparently there's a whole bunch of them in the game that Billy has to collect. Apparently all the villains, like Elaine, Dutch, Fantokio, and even Barnaby have their own gems. And the game devs are saying in this post that Barnaby holds the gem of reality. Now this is huge when it comes to this mystery. Let me explain. Love it or hate it, reality is what it is. And one has to choose whether to embrace it or try and escape it. However, if you had the gem of reality, you could somehow bend reality to your will. And that's why there's this post where Barnaby is said to be the, quote, bender of realities, unquote. So going back to the living Barnaby's dilemma of juggling work with play, it seems like he's trying to split himself into two different people to try to please everyone. The Barnaby who wants to be the most revered scientist in the world, and the Barnaby who wants to be the life of the party. So understandably, his normal reality is him struggling to find a balance between the two. And that's when I thought of a recurring object in the chase sequence, the clocks. If you look closely, you'll see some clocks scattered everywhere during the chase scene. And that's when it hit me. Time is limited for everybody, especially if you're a workaholic, a party animal, or trying to be both. Time is a part of reality. So Barnaby must have been struggling with time at some point during his life. He might have said, well, I wish I had time to do this, or I don't have time to do that, or something along those lines. But again, time is limited, and Barnaby has to find that balance to where he can still work, but also still have fun. And that's where things get a little... well, you'll see. Life and death are also part of reality because people are born every day, but guess what? People also die every day. That's a part of life. I set aside some cards and I created some sort of timeline. There are 2 cards to keep in mind, the cake and the grave/graveyard. Right off the bat, I saw the cake as a birthday cake, birth, while the graveyard obviously resembles death. So, life and death are literally on the table. I also set aside this clock because time. Time is what drives someone in their life from birth to death. And as I've said, time is limited for everyone. Now, let's apply that to Barnaby. Barnaby seems to have this struggle in finding the work-life balance. He knows that time is limited. He knows that pulling all-nighters result in feeling tired during the day, but he doesn't want to give up his fun-loving ways. So, when he somehow gets his feathers on the gem of reality, that's when things get spicy. Going back to the cards, I set aside a few more. A bike, a bell, and the guillotine. Now, the bike that's shown in the chase sequence is not just any bike. It's a tricycle, something that a child would play with. So I placed the bike right next to the cake, right next to birth, because being a kid, you get to have fun, right? But eventually we all grow up, and also eventually we die. Now, the bell is significant because in the Barnaby chase, if Billie gets killed by a bell falling onto her, Barnaby will say this.
No, a classic. Reminds me of a legend.
Well, whatever that legend was, it had to be a product of bad luck. But the guillotine is a different story. When one thinks about a guillotine, that's usually reserved for punishments. So here we have birth, childhood, which is the bike, and the graveyard is death. Death either by bad luck or as punishment. So why would this all matter to Barnaby? Well, let me show you this next tweet. Immortality is a curse. Well then. Now, this tweet speaks volumes because after everything that I just showed and told you guys, it seems like this theory is gonna blow the Barnaby mystery wide open. Or it might not. We don't know. I don't know. But this theory that I'm about to share with you guys comes from intense research. I spent a few months doing a lot of this research. That means there's a 50-50 chance of me being right or me being wrong. Whether I'm right or not, that'll only be determined once the Billie Bust Up game is officially released. Now, I don't care if I'm 100% wrong with this theory. I don't care. What really matters is the fun of making this theory. I mean, come on guys, it's fun. For me. Alright? Now with that said, I'm gonna tell you guys my theory on how Barnaby became a ghost owl. And I just wanna forewarn you guys, what you're about to listen to might be upsetting for some viewers, so I suggest going to this timestamp if you're not all about that. It's got some pretty dark themes, but for the rest of you, enjoy. Barnaby, a simple owl who dreamed of becoming well-respected in the science community. He tried to keep up with appearances, but he would often get sidetracked by his love for fun and parties. His career restricted him from having time for fun, and his party life kept him from keeping up with occupational demands. So he longed for a way to enjoy leisure while sustaining his career. But there was no way that he could sacrifice one for the other. But this was his reality, having to struggle to find the right balance for work and play. Perhaps he longed for his younger years when he had less obligations. Perhaps when he was a child. But after each birthday, one obligation became another, and come adulthood, he had so much on his plate. And with time flying by before he knew it, it was becoming impossible for him to live carefree. He had to be an adult. That was his reality. Perhaps there was a way to change his reality and transform it to where he had all the time in the world. Perhaps there was a way to be immortal. So, With his skills in the sciences, he conducts magical experiments. Surely there was a potion or a spell that would allow him to be immortal. He somehow finds the reality gem. Whether he knows what it does or not is still up in the air. And he's determined to figure out what it does and then use it for himself. However, one experiment has him achieving immortality at last. However, as time goes on and he watches all his loved ones and friends die over time, he starts to get lonely and he falls into despair. Realizing that being immortal was a mistake, he tries to end his life in more ways than one, hence the Million Gruesome Ways to Die song. His attempts fail, and he eventually resorts to magical experiments to try and undo the curse. However, one bad experiment transforms him into a ghostly abomination. With the reality gem still in his possession, he can now bend reality in however way he sees fit, with the only stipulation being that his soul is trapped in this purgatory state. And with his sanity beyond repair at this point, he accepts his fate. He only wishes for more souls to join him so that he can quench his thirst for fun and excitement. So, that was my theory on what might have happened to Barnaby, what might have made him into the ghost owl that he is today. Again, I don't care if I'm right or wrong. I just wanted to make this video just cuz. Anyways, this was an interesting video so far this year. Yeah, I say so far because we just started 2024. And yeah, more great things to come on this channel, I promise you. Anyways, leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel, and the eyes and plunge ears of the LarryBoy multiverse signing out. And I think Barnaby's gonna come after me. But don't worry guys, I'm ready for him. And I have a surprise for him. Stay tuned.